and Denmark right now are a bit of a disaster when it comes to royal titles. And as Charles is considering what the future holds for Archie and Lilibet, will he be able to avoid the same fate? Hello everyone, welcome to Royal News Network. My name is Brittany, and today we're going to be talking about the epic disaster, the absolute train wreck that is happening in Denmark right now when it comes to the royal titles for Prince Joachim's children. So he is the second son of Queen Margrethe, and his children will be officially stripped of their prince's and princess title when the new year comes. And really, this entire thing has been one giant disaster so far. I don't think anybody would say that this has been done well. It's been a complete and utter train wreck. It's been covered by CNN and so many other news outlets. And while I think the decision was correct, I think also it shows how these changes can result in a lot of deep family tensions. And if you're not careful, this can really come back to bite you in the rear. But if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany, and on this channel we talk about everything related to royals. If you love compelling commentary and a little bit of gossip along with reviews of television shows and movies. If you love royal fashion, tiara, jewelry, those sorts of things, I'll put a link in the description down below for my new royal fashion news channel, which will be launching later this month. But like I said, today we are going to be talking about Denmark. And Denmark is a country we don't talk about a lot. There is a beautiful crown princess, crown prince. They have 4 children. But what happened to the Queen's second born son? Well, apparently that has been one kind of grand implosion in the Danish royal household. And I don't feel like anybody knows what to do about it. And it comes down to the issue of titles. So throughout Europe, all royal families are basically streamlining. They are just allowing basically the main line of the family, whoever that happens to pass through, they are the ones who get the royal titles. They'll be the ones who probably work for the royal household. And the others are kind of told, you're going to have to find your own way in life. And this has been a bit challenging of how do you manage this, especially after the children are born. And this is what Denmark is finding out. So earlier last week, we were told that the Queen had decided that on the 1st of January, so 2023, her 4 grandchildren from her second son, so this would be Prince Joachim, his first wife, Countess Alexandra, and his second wife, Princess Marie, their children would be stripped of their prince and princess titles. So this is Prince Nikolai, Prince Felix, Prince Henrik, and Princess Athena. So Nikolai is 23, Felix is 20, Henrik is 13, and Athena is 10. So these kids will now be stripped of their titles. Obviously, the 2 older kids are not kids anymore. But these royal children will be stripped of their prince and princess titles and will instead be given the titles of Count and Countess of, I believe it's Mazapan or Mazatan. What is it again? Montpezat, is that right? That sounds French. So it is actually a French title that kind of sort of belonged to the Queen's husband, Henrik, who died a couple of years ago. And honestly, when he passed away, him and his wife actually were not on the greatest terms. He decided that he did not want to be buried with his wife, which is rather telling. So, but this is a title that the Queen created because he was kind of a pretender to this title in France. And so she decided to give him this title, and now it's being passed on to her grandchildren. But people are not happy with this. And it has been handled, and there's a couple ways to look at this, I think. A, it was handled incredibly poorly. But here's the thing, even though we are not living in the medieval times, I think people do use the media and kind of the court system, either gaslight the public, you could say, or try to push their agenda when they're perhaps not necessarily super happy with something. So we'll be exploring kind of this utter disaster that is currently the royal title situation in Denmark, and what lessons Charles needs to learn as he decides what to do with Archie and Lilibet, because Charles is the biggest figure here when it comes to Europe in terms of what he will title his grandchildren. This has been a huge question and one that he's having to deal with right now. And I think really this situation in Denmark is both a great encourager and a warning of how do you handle this? Especially because I think Harry and Meghan, even beyond kind of what Queen Alexandra and Marie are doing, are a huge, huge loose cannon. And we don't know exactly what they'll do and how they'll try to spin this to get their way. Because honestly, and this is just my opinion, some of what Joachim and his family are saying could perhaps be a bit of spin as well. But just before we start off, I'll go ahead and read to you what the official announcement said regarding these titles, because I think it is rather interesting. So it says, in April 2008, Her Majesty the Queen bestowed upon her sons, their spouses, and their descendants the titles of Count and Countess of Montbatten. In May 2016, it was announced that His Royal Highness Prince Christian, so this is the son of Crown Prince Frederick and Crown Princess Mary, and it's their oldest child, he will be the future king, as the only one of the Queen's grandchildren, is expected to receive an annuity from the state as an adult. So he will be, technically, him and his spouse and his father and his mother will be the only working members of the royal family. As a natural extension of this, Her Majesty has decided that as of 1 January 2023, His Royal Highness Prince Joachim's descendants can only use their titles as Counts and Countess of Montbatten, as the titles of Prince and Princess that they have held up till now will be discontinued. Prince Joachim's descendants will thus have to be addressed as excellencies in the future. The Queen's decision is in line with similar adjustments that other royal houses have made in various ways in recent years. With her decision, Her Majesty the Queen wishes to create the framework for the 4 grandchildren to be able to shape their own lives to a much greater extent without being limited by the special considerations and duties that a formal affiliation with the Royal House of Denmark as an institution involves. All 4 grandchildren maintain their places in the order of succession. So when it comes to this announcement, it makes a lot of sense. And again, it does fall in line with what the rest of Europe is doing, especially Sweden. I think Sweden is the biggest example here because the king had to strip his younger grandchildren. So these are I shouldn't say younger children, grandchildren. He had to strip the titles from the children of his younger children. So the king has 3 children. So Crown Princess Victoria, she is married to Prince Daniel. He was made a prince upon their marriage. He wasn't one before. And they have 2 children. So Princess Estelle and Prince Oscar. And these 2 children will eventually be working members of the Swedish royal family. And then you have Prince Carl Philip and his wife Princess Sophia, and they have 3 children. So that's Prince Gabriel, Prince Alexander, and Prince Julian. And then you have his youngest child. So this is Princess Madeline. She's the one who actually lives in Florida, and she has 3 children. So Princess Leonor, Prince Nicholas, and Princess Adrian. So the children of Prince Carl Philip and Princess Madeline have been stripped of their HRH titles because they are not working members of the royal household. So they are not kind of official members of the royal house, if that makes sense. They're still family members. They're still part of the royal family. They're still in the line of succession. But the Swedish royal family made a very big point of showing this picture of who will just be working members of the royal family. So we have the king and queen. So King Carl Gustaf, his wife Queen Sylvia, and then we have Crown Princess Victoria, Prince Daniel, and then we have their 2 kids, Her Royal Highness Princess Estelle, His Royal Highness Prince Oscar, and then we have Prince Carl Philip, his wife Sophia, and then we have Princess Madeline. Princess Madeline's husband is not there because he has never been a working member of the royal family, and he decided not to take a title upon his marriage to Madeline. So they seem to be all on the same page of this. So we heard the announcement and it was just like, okay. Others made statements saying, yes, we accept this decision, and they are all still members of the family. So clearly everyone was on the same page with this. Or even if they weren't happy about it necessarily, they decided to make these statements or make the situation known within house. And I think that goes to show, to a certain extent, although I follow this royal forum called Royal Dish, and I follow them, and so I know there's kind of some perhaps kind of tension between Princess Madeline and Princess Sophia. There might be a bit of tension there, and their house necessarily is not flawless, but when it comes to this, there was very much an agreement on this page. And perhaps it was because the children were all very young. They were perhaps not really super attached to his or her Royal Highness status. So they didn't just kind of freak out about this. So they're all still princes and princesses, and they still have dukedoms, but they no longer have that HRH. And usually that HRH means people curtsy to you, bow to you, those sorts of things. And it is kind of one of those things where it seems like royals very much attached to those statuses. And because royalty very much, even if you're a peripheral member, it's all about hierarchy. And the higher your title is, the greater respect that you get, the greater access to things you get. So that HRH, His or Her Royal Highness, is kind of a big deal. And obviously there's delineations beyond that as well. So there's His or Her Serene Highness. So this would be the title that Prince Albert has in Monaco. He is His Serene Highness because his country is a principality. However, his sister, Princess Caroline, is married still technically, even though she and her husband have not been seen together, I think in like 15, 20 years. This is Prince Ernst of Hanover. So he has a His Royal Highness status. So while they are still married, she can use the title of Her Royal Highness Princess Caroline rather than just Her Serene Highness Princess Caroline. So again, she gets that set up. Her daughter, so this is Princess Alexandra, is Her Royal Highness Princess Alexandra of Hanover. And then there's His or Her Highness. So this is the case in Norway. The king has 2 children. So this is Crown Prince Haakon and his older sister, Princess Martha Louise. So this is complicated. So there's also changes in terms of who can inherit the throne. So obviously a lot of houses have changed their rules. So whoever is born first, whether that is a boy or a girl, can inherit the throne. So in the case of Norway, this changed after Princess and Prince had been born. So Princess Martha Louise came first, then Prince Haakon, and Haakon became Crown Prince because he is the boy, even though he's younger than his sister. However, the law changed later. So Prince Haakon, his firstborn child, was a girl, so Princess Ingrid Alexandra. She will inherit the throne rather than her younger brother superseding her. Now in Sweden, this was kind of different. So it was initially that Crown Princess Victoria, when she was born, she became Crown Princess, but then when her brother, who was younger than her, was born, he became Crown Prince because, again, men are seen as better in that situation. However, the law changed and they made it retroactive, whereas other houses generally haven't necessarily done that. So the British royal household, for example, has not done that. If they did, then Princess Anne would actually be ahead of both of her brothers in the line of succession, and so would her children, which would cause, I think, a lot of chaos and moving and stuff. Anyways, so Princess Victoria once again became Crown Princess, and that is how she has stayed. And so her firstborn child was a girl, so Princess Estelle will one day become Crown Princess. I know, it's confusing. There's a lot of, and I think a lot of this too comes down to the royal houses are trying to figure out what to do in these situations. And so in Norway too, you have it, whereas Princess Ingrid Alexandra, she is a Her Royal Highness, while her brother, who is younger, is a His Highness. Again, these delineations of who has this line of succession. And interestingly as well, these kind of battles over titles kind of come in interesting, whereas Princess Martha Louise, she has an HRH title, or she did, but she gave it up over 20 years ago to pursue commercial interests. And now there's even more effort and interest into pulling all her titles because she is marrying a shaman guy who many think is very, very, very sketchy. And I do feel sorry for her and her children. Her husband committed suicide. He would have turned, I think, 50 last week. That's what she posted on her social media. He committed suicide on Christmas Day. I can't imagine how horrific that would be because I love Christmas. I can't imagine somebody deciding to do that on Christmas Day. So, and she's also apparently talks to angels. So she's a little loosey-goosey, I think would be the best description for her. So I think it's very good that Haakon is, I mean, although there has been a lot of kind of rumors about his wife, Haakon's wife, and her connections to drugs because the man who she had her firstborn child with, who she had out of wedlock, he was, I think, convicted of drugs or involved in drugs or something like that. And so again, and there's a questions about the scene she was in and how Haakon got caught up with it. Again, lots of complicated issues here, but back to Denmark. So all the royal families, again, are doing this streamlining thing. They're kind of getting rid of those hangers-on, let's say. So the queen decided, hey, I'll just make them counts and a countess. I mean, they'll just appreciate that, right? Wrong. That just went really, really wrong. And it kind of goes back to apparently kind of Joachim and Marie kind of being pushed out of the royal household. Now, I tried to look back through and I couldn't see everything because I can't speak Danish. And a lot of times when it comes to royals, I've found that the American media just kind of covers the broad happy stories. When it comes to kind of what's actually going on, like kind of the intrigue and stuff like that, I find a lot of that information out through Royal Dish, to be quite frank, because a lot of them, they start off the section with Denmark. Those who founded the forum, they cover all the royal families, but those who founded the forum were Danish. And so that was something they were interested in discussing. So I found that really interesting because it does give you a bit more information about kind of what's going on behind the scenes, because we just get this very vague thing here in the United States. So anyways, Joachim and Marie were actually kind of pushed out seemingly of the royal household. Apparently Princess Marie actually complained about it in some sort of interview, and they have been now living in France for the last several years. And this doesn't seem like it was a decision they really wanted to make. They were kind of forced to make it. Now, I can't say who made that decision for them, how they were forced. I'm unsure kind of about that information and how that all went down. But he's basically, I believe, a military attaché in France. His father was French, so they have kind of deep French connections, and Marie is French as well. So she is a cultural ambassador for Denmark, and they have been living in France for the last several years. They come back kind of for bigger state occasions. They usually come back there's always a big gala on New Year's Day, and they all get dressed up in tiaras and everything. Although, don't know if we'll see them there this year. They may send yeah, we've decided not to come. So anyways, there's just very much seemingly this tension going on in this royal household. And while I've read that Queen Margrethe is actually very popular, she has a nickname Daisy, she's also very well known for chain smoking. That is one of her claims to fame, is that's why her teeth are yellow, and when she wears her gold tiara, her teeth and her tiara kind of match. It's no bueno. But anyways, so she is a popular figure, but all these royal households, again, are trying to figure out what to do with these spares. And some of them have not prepared themselves well, because again, it's kind of this changing of the time. Frederick is over 50, so his brother is not too far behind him. He's in his late 40s. And so they're trying to figure out what to do with these people that they don't actually need. And, Joachim and Marie were kind of basically kicked off the payroll. And I think there was some tension too, because it ended up being that the Queen ended up having to pay a pretty good chunk of money to Joachim's first wife, Princess Alexandra, who is now a countess. And so, again, a lot of complicated, I think, family dynamics going on behind the scenes. So I can't quite say what led to this completely devolving as a situation, but things I don't think were necessarily good. And so here's what happened. The palace made this announcement. One of the first to actually respond, and she said she was authorized to respond on behalf of her ex-husband and his new wife, is Countess Alexandra. And she said, "We are all confused by the decision. We are saddened and in shock. This comes like a bolt from the blue. The children feel ostracized. They cannot understand why their identity is being taken away from them." Joachim had been told about this initially in May, and so there were obviously discussions going on behind the scenes. I don't think he was necessarily happy with the discussions though. And apparently they were kind of given 5 days notice about this decision, and that it had been made, and basically the situation was settled. And obviously they were like, oh, whoa, pump the brakes. This is not what we were told. This is not what we wanted. And again, I think this goes back to, if you have dysfunctional family dynamics going on behind the scenes, I think it doesn't help when it comes to kind of big situations like these, because the Swedish family, they had their dysfunction, but apparently they were able to get it together for this announcement about the stripping of the HRHs. It wasn't the case here. So Joachim was actually kind of cornered on his way to work, and he was asked about the situation. Here's some of what he said. "I was given 5 days notice of this to tell my children that at New Year their identity will be taken away from them. I am very, very sorry to see them sad and questioning what is going on over their heads," he said. "On the 5th of May, I was presented with a plan that this whole thought about my children's identity would be taken from them when they each turned 25. Athena turns 11 in January. And then I was given 5 days notice as the decision accelerated." So why do you think the speed up, he was asked? "I simply don't know. I was originally asked for time to think about it and gave my feedback. That would also be taken into account." The Queen said yesterday that she thinks it is good for the grandchildren. What do you think? "I can say that my children are sad about it. My children don't know which leg to stand on. what they should believe. Why should their identities be removed? Why should they be punished in that way? He said. Can you explain why it was so important to you? I don't want to engage in speculation and mudslinging. I tell the truth, there it is. I was given 5 days notice, and the original plan that was presented, it was called 25 years, and I asked to be allowed to return with my proposal, and then it was all done for this upcoming new year. He emphasized that the whole family is affected by the situation. I am so sorry for my children's sake, he said. I only demand the truth, and that's the one I say. Obviously, he's making statements, and then his ex-wife is also making statements to CNN. And we do have this video, I should have mentioned this earlier, this video of the Queen. I put it in a previous video, and I think it's good to see it again because to me, she looks kind of taken aback because again, she's pretty popular and I don't think she was anticipating such a negative reaction to this. So go ahead and take a watch of this video here.
Så det for børnebørnenes skyld, selvfølgelig. De udtaler, at de føler dem udstødt på grund af deres beslutning om at fratage dem deres titler. Hvordan påvirker den reaktion dem?
Jamen, det må man se, hvordan jeg har ikke selv set det.
Yeah, so Queen, I do feel sorry for her. I feel like she seems very confused, and she's also in her 70s. And some people were mentioning on Royal Forum, I have no proof about this. I do not want to speculate at all, but some people wondering, well, maybe she had dementia because this announcement has been such a train wreck. Well, you would think that the palace, people who generally want to keep their jobs would probably try to make this a little smoother. So I don't really anticipate or think that's the case. But again, it's something also to consider. But clearly something went wrong. So we also have more statements. Countess Alexandra's spokesperson was in a conversation with CNN and said they were very sad and in shock. She can't believe why now, because there's no good reason. They would lose their titles anyway when they got married one day. Her sons are young men, so maybe they might get married in the near future. So why shouldn't it wait until that day so that the titles would disappear on a happy day? Her spokesperson continued, their father told his children they were quite shocked. He's really a man of honor. He's lived all his life in his family with that title, and he's shocked and nearly cried this morning when one of the European tabloids talked to him in Paris. It's just their loss of identity, and it's very hard for the little children and young men. As Prince Nikolai said to me, what will they write in my passport now? The 4 children have not spoken with their grandmother since the announcement was made, she said. In an official statement, the royal household said, as Her Majesty the Queen stated yesterday, the decision has been a long time coming. The Queen's decision has taken various forms along the way, but Prince Joachim has been involved in and will be fully informed about the process since May 5th. We fully understand that there are many emotions involved at the moment, but we hope that the Queen's desire to future-proof the royal house of Denmark will be respected. So, and as well, one of the Queen's grandchildren, so this is Prince Nikolai, who's 23, also made a statement. He said, my whole family and I are, of course, very sad. We are, as my parents have also stated, in shock at this decision and at how quickly it has actually gone. I'm very confused as to why it has to happen like this. Recently, the Queen actually went to a gala event, and when asked again by journalists if she wanted to make a comment, she said, not today. So clearly, yeah, things are going wrong. And then we also had this interview with Prince Haakon and Princess Marie in France. So they have done this interview, and here's some of what they said. They made the allegation, of course, that now Athena, their youngest child and their only daughter, is being bullied at school. In Paris today, Princess Marie said, Athena is bullied at school. They come and say, is it you who is no longer a princess? I think I have to defend our children now. We think there are 2 serious things in this case. The first is to take a name from our children. It's about their name. It's not about those titles. Athena and Henrik of Denmark, those are their names. The second is the children were publicly exhibited at very short notice. This means that we as parents have not had time to prepare them for the change in people's reactions. We wish we had had time. I think that is unreasonable. This case is about children's conditions, not about anything else. It's strange to suddenly think that you can take a name from a child. After all, children don't think like we do. They have difficulties understanding it. Prince Joachim. We looked deeply into each other's eyes and have experienced our feelings of not being able to express that great upheaval to our children. Princess Marie. Altina says, what shall I be called now? Why don't I have the same name, mother and father? You can see here, and I'll kind of get into a couple of my theories and instances on this, but I'm trying to give you all the information, so hopefully you can glean it from yourselves. And I will say these are translations by other people. I have not personally translated anything. If you find a better translation of something, obviously, or you actually speak Danish, maybe you know better than me. But I can only show you or tell you what I've got here, and so I'm just trying to help you to the best of my ability. I do feel like that's a little bit manipulative. We looked into each other's eyes. Sorry, I just got to say that. Have you spoken to the Crown Prince couple? No, unfortunately, Joachim said. So Princess Marie said no. Joachim said no, unfortunately. How is your relationship? As it is, Princess Marie said. As it can be, Prince Joachim said. So it's complicated, the reporter asked. It's complicated, namely, that's it, Princess Marie. Has the Queen tried to talk to you? Unfortunately, no, Joachim said. It's also family, or whatever we want to call it. We would have liked to have had time to talk about it. What do you think this is about? That's a good question. I don't think it's modern to have some injured children. So this is the idea of having a slimmer royal household. It says some injured children, so it could be just a translation thing and that there's not another good word for it. I don't know why that's particularly mentioned, but it is. Joaquin, the reality must be still. Whether you modernize or slim down, it must be done in a proper way. It's about the children, orderliness in children. It's a very heavy matter. I don't know how they feel if they have to think it through. Now it is preparation time. We didn't have that. It says, BT mentions here that in 2020, Princess Marie said it was not their own choice to move to France. So they were sent into a kind of exile. So again, there's a little bit of tensions about going to France, even though she's from France and he technically also speaks French and has French ancestry. Princess Marie, a few years ago, you said it was not your choice to move to France. Do you see this as part of the winding down of your family's role in the royal house? Yes, of course. But we have an active role in the royal house, and I think that you should remember that. Ooh, it's got a little saucy, a little spicy. But we have always told our children that they must be independent and they will not get an appendage. But it is something else to take away a name. How do you proceed from here? I do not know. We'll have to see, Marie said. We have 2 lovely children here, and then we have 2 lovely children there. So his older children live with their mother or live in Denmark rather than in France with their parents. We have 2 lovely children here and 2 lovely children there. I don't want to say that we are on the phone every day, but we have a closeness and we are one and the same core. I want to emphasize that, of course, there are much more serious things going on in the world right now during these days. But it's strange to have to talk about your children's names and titles when we are facing some serious challenges. But remember the way children think and their conditions, Marie said. They have a very different worldview, and it is very close to my job as a defense attaché. My thoughts are often out in the big world, but right now we have given a full defense for our children. They also need to rest now. Princess Marie believes that it will be difficult to find peace because the whole world now knows about the case. Foreign media have also written about the historic crisis in the Danish royal house. So this is from BT. BT also said, while BT interviewed the prince and princess, a French woman approached and told the couple that their children will always be prince and princesses to her. The situation has left the couple speechless, and they will both begin to cry because they are so touched. But Prince Joachim and Princess Marie emphasize that they are not thinking of leaving the Danish royal house. Instead, they will continue their work in their own way, even if the family is divided like never before. We never had any doubts about it. I hope no one doubts that, Marie said. Joachim, that's exactly what we do. After all, in each of our positions, we are representatives of Denmark and the Danish interests, and the royal house and the royal house's interests. So this is really quite a interesting interview, and I think it's a huge warning for Charles about what to perhaps expect if he makes the decision not to give Archie and Lilibet titles. But what will happen in the future of Denmark here? And why did the Queen perhaps make it? Again, we know all the royal families are modernizing, streamlining, but what's also interesting to think about is Prince Nikolai. And he's gone into some commercial ventures using his royal title. He's done kind of a Raffles a hotel ad. He's also done some modeling, and he's very prominently featuring his title. which is supposedly, I guess, just His Highness, but he's using His Royal Highness in this raffles ad. So go ahead and take a watch on this ad here.
Royalty to me is both family and traditions. Royal Highness, Prince or Nikolai, definitely just Nikolai.
So again, the royal household is looking at all this going, okay, he's kind of making money off of his royal connections. And while we're not totally against this, I mean, he is a rather handsome young man, we're also like, he can't totally pull us into this either. So the royal household, I think, made the appropriate decision. Now, was the execution good? No. But what if Marie and Joachim have known about this, like they've said, for like 6 months, or 5 to 6 months, and they decided the decision wasn't going their way. So when the decision came out, they were angry and kind of tried to manipulate the media to try to put pressure on the Queen and royal household to make them look bad because they made them look bad by stripping the titles. I don't know if that could be the case, but again, it goes back to this thing, whereas we're not in the Middle Ages, but people who are lower down in the line of succession can still try to manipulate things, stir up tension, because it perhaps will benefit them in their interests. So I could definitely see Joachim and Marie doing something like this here. Do I know that for sure? Absolutely not. I'm just speculating, just giving you some ideas, because I think it's important for us to kind of see a lot of different sides, and I think there's a lot of ways to look at this. And I'm sure Crown Prince Frederick and Crown Princess Mary are looking at their younger children. So this is Princess Isabel, Princess Josephine, and Prince Vincent going, okay, so we know our kids will they have 4 kids too. So there's a lot of kids, and the Queen has been blessed with 8 grandchildren, which is fantastic. And I will add too, I forgot to mention this, that it actually made sense to give prince titles to Prince Felix and Prince Nikolai, because their uncle, so this is Crown Prince Frederick, at the time had not been married and did not have any children yet. So his children are all younger than his older brother. So it kind of makes sense why he was given those titles. This is kind of the similar case in Sweden. So Crown Princess Victoria, she was in her late 30s when she got married. So there were a lot of questions about whether or not she could have children. So she did have her first child, Princess Estelle, and she was kind of the first grandchild born within the royal household. The second was Princess Madeline's firstborn child. So this is Princess Leonor. So Princess Leonor and Estelle were the 2 heirs of the royal household. Princess Madeline eventually had, or kind of a year afterward, had Prince Nicholas, and then Victoria, not too long after, had Oscar, and then Carl Philip and his wife had children. So they were able to fill out the line, but for a while, for a little bit, it was just Estelle and Leonor. So it made sense to have Leonor be a princess, because who knew her uncle would have 3 children and she just gets knocked down the line. And again, that's how all of this goes. You are high until you just get kicked down. So again, what does this mean for Charles? What does this mean for King Charles? Well, I think there's a couple of lessons he can learn here. Number 1 is try to make sure everybody's on the same page, with the caveat that Harry and Meghan may try to steamroll you if they don't get their way in the media. So they may say to your face, oh yes, we understand. But as soon as your back is turned, and as soon as they think it'll benefit them in the media, they'll do kind of an about face and then attack you for these decisions. I can completely see Harry and Meghan doing this. So even if Charles gets the okay, even if he gets this agreement, they still might turn on him at some point. So that's definitely something for him to consider. Then we also have, looking at all of this, is how do you kind of roll this out? You need to have a good reasoning, and you have to make sure the people are kind of with you too. So it is kind of a different situation in Denmark, because Joachim and Marie are still popular, Harry and Meghan are not. So apparently on the Danish kind of royal website, people in Denmark, so they're most likely complaining in Danish, are voicing their support for Joachim and Marie there. So again, very, very interesting thing to consider. And I think too, Charles just has to figure out a way to leverage Harry and Meghan to make sure that they are not going to cause a stink about this. And I don't know if he can entirely avoid it. And I think he'll also have to recognize too that regardless of what his decision is, it'll probably cause consternation. Ergo, he may have to deal with a falling out of his son, even a more falling out, because this is kind of what happens. And I think sometimes people just get miffed. They're not as high in the line of succession. They are not as important as they once were. This is, I think, the struggle of the spare. They don't know what to do. So yes, I have sympathy for the fact that the kids will have to change their name, but I feel like also it's been wholly overflated that this is like the most devastating thing, because they all probably would have lost their titles eventually. It's just happening now. But I think Marie, Joachim, and Alexandra saw an opening to kind of turn the screws to Her Majesty and perhaps maybe get something out of this that they initially weren't expecting. So there's a lot of different sides to look at this. And I think, again, it's a huge encouragement to Charles that yes, other monarchies are doing it. And he has actually a royal family that's had something that's kind of hit the international news that he can go, well, we're following Denmark. And that could probably work. Again, he has to be really careful here, because I think Harry and Meghan, regardless of what they say in private, he needs to get something in writing, recording, whatever, them saying that they're okay with this or that they agree to this. The problem is, I think Harry and Meghan could still turncoat on them if they wish. So Charles has to say, yes, I see the encouragement here, but I also see the downside, because this could turn into a huge scandal you're not anticipating. And even if he's riding the high of being king, if he doesn't handle this title thing correctly, I think things can really turn for him. So I think this is a very, very precarious time. I mean, I've said that multiple times, but again, this transition of power that happens in monarchies, this is when they have revenge plots, people get assassinated. I mean, there's so many things that can happen when these transitions of power occur, because things are shifting. The court is shifting. People are figuring out now where they lie with this new monarch, this person who has all this power. Harry and Meghan are not high in Charles's graces right now, but he wants to see his grandchildren. He doesn't want to ostracize his son, because I think all the British royals know that at some point Harry will come on his knees crawling back and begging to be let back into the family. I think they're all kind of anticipating that at some point. But again, they have to manage expectations and manage this fallout. And the British, I think, have an example of something done well in Sweden and something done badly in Denmark. And I don't think you can control all scenarios, but Charles, this has to be an epic tight walk. Perfect. Between like the two towers, a huge chasm of how you tightrope walk this so that you can kind of get all the people on your side, kind of shut down Harry and Meghan, and make sure the monarchy is secured for the future. And that is not an easy feat. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think about this title conundrum that Denmark is currently under right now, because I just read it and go, how did this go so wrong? I don't know how this went so wrong. But clearly I think there is more going on behind the scenes and a lot of family dynamics, and people I don't think are generally happy. But guys, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Bye.